Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode 4 of Silver Underground Podcast. A weekly podcast where I take a look at a unknown, forgotten, or just a downright bad movie and let you know if it's worth your time or not. I'm your host Doug, and after a month of watching nothing but just bad, horrible, stupid fucking movies, I really felt like I needed to cleanse my palate a little bit and decided maybe I should watch something that's a little bit more competently made. I thought, you know what? It's a big studio. They put millions of dollars into it. It has to be good, right? So I decided I would just give Daredevil a shot. I remember when Daredevil came out, I was still in elementary school, and everyone was still riding off of the Spider-Man craze, man. Spider-Man, the first one from 2001, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, was fucking awesome. It's still a pretty good movie now. And obviously, when something is super successful and super popular, other studios are going to copy it. So 20th Century Fox came along and had the rights to Daredevil. They had the rights to other movies like, I think they had the X-Men that came out before Spider-Man. That was pretty big. They also had the Fantastic Four, but they also had this movie Daredevil. They had the comic book character Daredevil. I guess from an executive's point of view, he does look kind of like Spider-Man. And I mean, it's a comic book movie. Comic book movies obviously are on the rise around this time, so it was a no-brainer. Let's make a fucking Daredevil movie. Daredevil came out in 2003, directed and written by Mark Steven Johnson, the guy who later came along to give us Ghost Rider, if you remember that fucking movie. Movie stars Ben Affleck, Jennifer Gardner, Colin Farrell, Michael Clark Duncan, Jon Favreau. Yeah, it's a pretty stacked cast. There's a few cameos throughout the movie too. But how was this movie? Well, right off the bat, it starts off, it just rips off Spider-Man. We get like a Spider-Man-esque intro. If you remember from the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, there's like a montage of like spider webs and, whatever. This is more or less the same thing, except it's city lights and buildings. And it's all dark bluish, and it's Spider-Man. They're blatantly ripping off Spider-Man. But it fades away to, for some reason, a CGI rat. Of all things to CGI, the CGI rat. And this is 2003, so it is fucking awful. Super fake. But we also find out that Kevin Feige directed this. And if you don't know, Kevin Feige is responsible for the MCU. Every fucking Marvel movie that's successful right now, he produced. He also produced this movie. So, I mean, right off the bat, expectations are fucking high. But we get a shot of Daredevil. It's actually a very iconic shot. Daredevil hanging at the cross on top of the cathedral while thunder's coming down and, whatever. We don't really know what's happening, but he comes down from the ceiling and falls. A priest comes to his aid, and then we just get terrible, horrible monologuing by Ben Affleck, who plays Daredevil himself. We get some backstory then. Matt Murdock, he grew up in Hell's Kitchen. He gets bullied for no reason. His dad's a boxer, who is taking bribe money or something from a big crime boss. We don't know who it is yet. Actually, I think it is mentioned, but it's really not important. But, just watching this, I noticed that each scene is very comic book like. And what I mean by that is it very much looks like, this is something that's straight out of a comic book. Like how everything's framed, how it's lighted, how, emphasis on like some people's facial expressions and their wrinkles. It looks like something that they took out of a comic book that was drawn and they tried to recreate it as much as possible. And for the most part, I mean, I'm for it. You know, I don't hate it. It's not bad. But this was definitely at a time where, you know, studios didn't know how to make comic book movies, so they just thought, well, let's just recreate what we see on the pages, and that's going to be good enough. But anyway, while we get more monologuing and narration from Ben Affleck, he mentions how you know, he got good grades or something, and he was super excited to come home and show his dad. And on his way home, he took a shortcut and ran into his dad beating up some guy for the mob. And then he runs away into, I don't really know where this place is, but they just have open biohazard containers and they just let anybody walk through. Like, I know this is supposed to be set in the 70s, and according to my parents, the 70s were super laid back times, but this is a fucking construction zone or something. Like, they shouldn't be letting kids walk through this area. But he cuts off like a forklift or something, and it turns and pierces one of the biohazard chemical barrels, and it splashes on his face, and we get a pretty cool, I have to admit, it's a pretty cool scene of the inside of his eyeball and seeing like the radioactive whatever kind of mess with his DNA. And then it cuts to, this is honestly when it starts to go a little downhill. It cuts to Matt Murdock as a kid in the hospital, and everything is hyper focused. You know, he hears everything louder. That gives off like an echolocation, and we do see his Daredevil vision, and it honestly looks like a PS2 cutscene. It is fucking awful. Like, look, one or two times in this movie, sure, but they keep cutting back to it throughout the movie, and it never looks good. And there are some scenes where it's very clearly CGI, vision, whatever. Then there's other scenes where, like, they were obviously filming and they put the filter over it, but it looks like they put like a fucking like fabric over the camera or something and filmed. It looks bad. Anyway, through more narration, they mention, or Ben Affleck mentions that, you know, him and his dad decided to promise each other that they were going to be the best themselves that they can possibly be. And we are greeted to early 2000s new metal butt rock soundtrack. And I am so for it. I have a huge soft spot for, you know, early 2000s rock like that. And I honestly miss soundtracks like that from the early 2000s. I wish they still went on today. It was a treat. Yeah, we get a montage of Matt Murdock learning his powers, and honestly, he picks up on them pretty quick. Like, I know he mentions like, oh, my senses were heightened, and I had superhuman ability and strength. Look, I'm all for that. That's cool. But this motherfucker's he's blind, doing a handstand on the edge of a tall building and like grinding off of rails and stuff. And like, look, I would have just accepted he was hitting a speed bag really fast. I would have accepted that scene first, and then like a slow progression, even a montage. This is barely even a montage. He just, all of a sudden he has superpowers like instantly. And then, you know, we cut to a scene where Matt Murdock's dad is supposed to throw a fight for whatever mob boss. I think it was the Kingpin. I'm not sure. It might have been the Kingpin. He's supposed to throw a fight, and he decides not to because his son is cheering him on in the crowd. And long story short, his dad dies. His dad gets killed. We don't know who it is. We have our suspicions. But Matt Murdock finds his dad shot in an alleyway. And look, it's not Batman, okay? It happens in the comics. But then it cuts to Matt Murdock as an adult. And he is sleeping in a one of those sensory deprivation chambers, which is actually a pretty cool idea. It makes sense because it's the scene is actually pretty well done. It shows him kind of floating in the water and it's dark, and then it opens up, and then the moment that it cracks open, all the noises from New York just kind of creeps in, and it does show he does need this sensory deprivation tank in order to sleep. Then he quickly drowns it out to more early 2000s new metal butt rock, where he's kind of getting ready for his day. It shows him how he folds his money so he knows which is a $5 and which is a $10 bill. It shows, I'm assuming he's got tags that shows the color of suits that he wears and whatnot. And it shows him going to court. He's obviously a lawyer. And he has the ability to tell when somebody is lying, which basically he just asks a question, can tell by your heart rate if you're lying, and then he just chooses not to argue that it's a lie, or maybe he doesn't have the evidence. I don't know. Anyway, he's in court. He's up against some dude that I think beat his wife or something. And I think the guy gets off clean or something, and Matt Murdock is talking to Foggy Nelson, who's played by Jon Favreau. By the way, Jon Favreau is one of the best characters in this movie. He is just, he's a treat, honestly. But yeah, they're just talking like, oh, I can't believe that guy got off. And Foggy goes, hey, you want to get some beers later? And Matt goes, I can't. I'm busy tonight. And then the camera fucking zooms in on his face. And then it cuts to like a suit up montage. And this is where we really get a look at Daredevil's suit in this movie. And like, look, it's not a bad suit. It's cool for what it is. It's cool. It looks like it's mostly leather. But it also looks very stiff. There are scenes where Daredevil is running, or he's like throwing a punch or something, and it just looks like Ben Affleck can barely fucking move his arms, or barely move at all, really. It looks very stiff. It looks very unpractical. And there's something about his cowl that I don't like. And honestly, it's really hard to not compare this movie with the TV show that came out on then Netflix. Now it's on Disney Plus. But his eyes are too far apart. It looks weird. Honestly, it doesn't look good. And there's just something, I don't know. There's something off about like how low the mask goes on. I don't like the cowl, but everything else, the suit itself, it looks cool. It's just not practical. After this suit up montage, and he's also playing around with his staffs and stuff, he then jumps off a building, lands on one of those, I think it's called like a lift they have on the side of buildings where like people can wash the windows and stuff. He lands on like 3 of those and like breaks them to jump off of each one. He's honestly causing a lot of city utility damage in order to look cool. But he makes his way to a bar where he finds the guy earlier who got let off in court, and he basically, there's just a big shootout and fight scene. The fight scene is pretty cool. For what it is, I mean, it's very early 2000s action. There's a cool scene actually where like he's fighting some dude and he needs to get away real quick, so he uses his staff to like zip line him up to the ceiling fan, and just how that scene was pretty cool. But yeah, he kicks everyone's ass in there, and he's then chasing the guy who got away from court or got off from court, whatever. He's chasing him, and they honestly make Daredevil seem like an 80s slasher villain because he chases him into the subway, and Daredevil is about to find him and confront him. And as he does, the subway car rushes by, and he's incapacitated from the sound of the subway going by. Now, the issue with this scene is not even 5 minutes earlier, there were like semi-automatic weapons and pistols going off, fucking gunshots constantly going off, shotguns going off. Gunshots are fucking loud. And look, it's been a very long time since I've been to New York, but I have been on the subway in New York, and I don't remember the subway being louder than a fucking gunshot. But for some reason, the gunshots didn't do anything to Daredevil. The subway swooshing by stops him in his tracks, which gives the bad guy enough chance to pull his gun out and say, "Oh, you're fucking dead," or whatever. And it's not like Daredevil is being dramatic or anything for some reason. Because we get another fucking Daredevil vision scene where like his senses are very distorted. So obviously it's affecting him. Why? Don't fucking know. It just because. Dramatic effect. I don't know. But anyway, Daredevil hears the click of the gun. He gets the upper hand, pushes the guy onto the tracks. And I think the guy breaks his legs or something because he just lays on the tracks and he notices that another subway is coming. And Daredevil says some stupid line like, "Oh, you see that light? It's not heaven, it's the L train." And, while this whole thing is happening, the guy could have easily have crawled away or at least gotten away from the tracks in some sort of way. But no, he just decides to lay on his back and just scream. But yeah, then we cut to a scene where detectives are on scene. They find the dead body on the tracks. And, yeah, we get... Oh, fuck, I can't even remember who this guy's name was. Ben Urch. Ben Yurch. We get Ben Yurch, who is a journalist who's been following Daredevil for years, I guess. And he's basically pressing the detective, asking him if Daredevil's involved, this and that. And the detective says that, there's no proof that Daredevil was even here, nor does he exist. And somehow, even though there are detectives on scene and cops there, either they just fucking got there. No, they hadn't have just gotten there because they were just taking the body away. So there had to have been enough time for these detectives to, survey the crime scene. The journalist flicks his cigarette on the ground, and then we get the iconic scene of the double D's, the two D's on fire on the ground. And look, I feel like it's been said a million times by other people who have reviewed this, so I don't want to get too much into this. It looks cool for a trailer shot, but when you really start to think about it, it makes no fucking sense at all. Okay, superpowers aside, because when you see Daredevil vision, all right, you see that it's very skewed. There's only so much he actually can see. One, how did he do it? Two, where did he get whatever the fuck it is? Is it gunpowder or something? How is there enough gunpowder to make that size of fire DD thing or whatever the fuck it is on the ground? If it was gunpowder, it looks cool for the trailer. It doesn't make any sense story-wise. It's just something to look cool. And then we get a bunch of stupid shots too of things reflecting off of glasses. Like we get shots reflecting off of Matt Murdock's glasses. We got one earlier before the suit up scene. We get one here for the DD fire scene. We get a few just scattered throughout the movie. And again, it looks like something that was ripped off of a comic book panel. And that's fine. You know, that's obviously the style that they're going for, but it's very, very cheesy and it's very, very campy. We cut back to a scene where Matt Murdock is coming back to his house. I think it's his house. Yeah, he comes back to his house and he listens to the answering machine and he has a voice message from some girl that he was obviously seeing. And just the dialogue from this actress is just, I don't know who the fucking Mark Steven Johnson, is that his name? Yeah, he wrote this shit. And it's just so bad. And it's like, we get it, you know? We get it. He can't hold down a relationship. But, like, this message just goes on for fucking ever. And it's very much like, you know, relationships are supposed to take steps. Well, this is a step. Goodbye. And it's so fucking stupid. Oh, yeah, and we also get a bunch of shots of, like, Ben Affleck or Matt Murdock without his glasses on. And, like, man, Ben Affleck does not know how to play a blind character because, I mean, one, his eyes are just cross-eyed all the time. Which, I mean, I know only a few people who are blind and, you know, their eyes aren't cross-eyed. But apparently, because he does have contacts in, apparently he was actually blind when he was filming this because those contacts completely skewed his vision. I don't know if being cross-eyed was just a reaction to those contacts. He just couldn't see and he couldn't help but be cross-eyed, or he just thought, I'm blind, this is what blind people do. But he's also not good at being a blind character because there are so many scenes throughout this movie where he can clearly see what's happening. Not in costume. In costume is passable. But like when he's Matt Murdock, when he is just walking around as a civilian, he can clearly see what's going on around him. But yeah, we go to another scene of Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson talking in a like a coffee house or something. And honestly, the scenes with them together are very well done. I like the dialogue between them. It really does sound like two best friends just talking about nothing. I mean, it really reminded me of a conversation that I would have with my friends. But then we are greeted to Elektra, Jennifer Gardner herself, showing up. She walks in through the door, and like Elektra, she does have like these emerald green eyes in the comics, and they really wanted to emphasize that she has these just vibrant green eyes, because when she walks in, God, it wasn't like she was wearing contacts. It was like they digitally colored in her eyes to be like just vibrant green. It was so bad. But yeah, she walks over, she sits down. Ben Affleck's like, I'm gonna go talk to her, and you know, tries to fucking, as the kids say, riz her up. But she's obviously creeped out and leaves. And then Matt Murdock just goes and fucking stalks her, like just straight up hunts her down. And runs into her at some sort of playground where they just have the most robotic fucking, it looks, they engage in a fight. It's very overly stylized, but not in a good kind of way. It's very, like I said, robotic. It's almost like they're dancing, which is obviously what they were going for. But this scene really does feel like it was tacked on at the last minute. Like, apparently this movie was supposed to be R-rated. It was supposed to be super dark. It was supposed to be super violent. But obviously the producers got involved and wanted this to be tailored more towards kids. And this scene was a result of that. And it's so blatantly obvious that this was a last minute, we need to throw this scene in there. It was just, it's so dumb. It's not a good scene. And like the whole time she's, there is some playful banter and, is it really this hard to get your name? Oh, you should try asking for my number. And it's fucking stupid. Anyway, Elektra wins and she says, oh, my name's Elektra Nachios. And this scene is over. We get we cut over to Fisk. Yeah. We cut over to Fisk Tower, where we meet the Kingpin, who is played by Michael Clark Duncan, who, honestly, this is a hot take. I'm going to get so much shit for this. But I think I like this Kingpin more than the Vincent D'Onofrio Kingpin from the TV show. Now, stick with me here for a second. The Kingpin we get in the TV show is great. He is, fucking terrifying, and he is just a complete brute. Like he will just snap at any minute, and he will beat someone. He literally cave somebody's fucking face in. I mean, he is great in the show, but Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin in this movie is just so fucking diabolical. He is evil, and you can just tell that Michael Clark Duncan is having a fucking blast playing this character. He fits perfect for this movie. Honestly, though, if Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin was in the TV show, it would have felt very out of place, and yeah, it wouldn't have been good. But in here, it is beyond perfect. Honestly, the villains in this movie, and I'll get into Bullseye when I get to him. The villains are probably, again, my favorite thing of this movie. You can just tell that they're having so much fun playing this. But yeah, we get a shot of Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and he's talking about stuff. He's really not that important to the story. Right now, he's not important to the story. We then cut back to Matt Murdock and Elektra walking and talking, and then and the whole Kingpin scene. He's like, "Oh yeah, get me Bullseye. We need a hitman, the best hitman in the world." So yeah, then we're greeted to Bullseye, who is played by Colin Farrell, and again, you can just tell he's having a fucking blast playing this character. At least it seems like he is. My wife actually pointed out that Bullseye in this movie almost seems like if Joey from Friends were to play a villain. That's just how super, just over-exaggerated facial expressions. He's fucking all over the place. He's wacky. He's like a Looney Tunes character in this movie. He just goes for it. Bullseye is very cartoony, but in a good way. We then cut, more shit kind of happens. I mean, nothing really important happens. We go back to Matt Murdock walking, and Elektra is now stalking him. And he's like, "Oh, let me show you this spot. I love this area in Hell's Kitchen," and takes her to a rooftop. And she goes, "Wow, look at this place!" But no, I wish I could, or I used to come up here as a kid. This view is amazing, and nothing like that. It's just, wow, look at this place. No apology afterwards. The dialogue is so fucking bad. But then Matt Murdock goes, "Oh wait, hold on. It's gonna rain," and when it does, the sound that the raindrops make when it first hits the surface bounces off, and it's like I can see. And it goes from dry, not raining at all, to fucking pouring rain. Now, again, it's been years since I've been to New York. And I have been on the East Coast when it's raining. I have never been in a situation anywhere in my life where it is dry and then instantly pouring rain, especially in this movie. But yeah, we get a terrible PS2 shot of Jennifer Gardner, and then they decide to have sex, and he wakes up, and again, where like, just for story's sake, he didn't need his sensory deprivation chamber. He slept fine. I don't know if it was just because, he got laid, and everything is better when you get laid, or what, but she invites him to this party, and basically, yeah, more shit goes on. Like, we get a lot of scenes of like Daredevil fighting crime. Really, there is no story up until, honestly, like the middle of the second act, if even, like near the end of the second act. Basically, Matt Murdock and Foggy, they go to this party. It's like a big ball or something. I forget what it is. They mention what it is, but it's really not important. But everybody is there. They run into Wilson Fisk. Foggy tries to get Wilson Fisk as a client, but Matt Murdock's like, no, we only represent innocent people. And then Matt Murdock meets up with Elektra. They dance. We see Elektra's dad, who's watching them dance. And then earlier, Elektra's dad, he had a deal with Wilson Fisk, and he wanted out. So come to this scene at the ball. Fisk is basically like, hey, look, once you're out completely. And he hands him a rose, which is a sign of, we have a hit on you, which is the same rose we see earlier in the movie when Matt Murdock's dad dies. So, big clue who killed Matt Murdock's dad. Elektra's dad storms out. There's kind of a fuss going on outside. Elektra follows him. Matt Murdock follows him. And this is a prime example of where Ben Affleck just doesn't know how to play a blind person, because he can clearly see what the fuck is going on. There's a bunch of bodyguards around him. People are, going back and forth, and he's like obviously he's blind. He can still hear. He can still tell like who's talking in front of him, who's talking beside him. But you just have to see the scene to understand. Like, there's just things happening around him where he's able to like he's looking at things. Anyway, Elektra and her dad take off. Matt Murdock knows something's wrong. And then we cut to Bullseye. He steals a bike, and he is rushing down Times Square. And we are given just a very loud and nauseating song from Drowning Pool. Where it's just showing a chase scene where Bullseye is chasing down Elektra's dad to kill him. There's a scene where Elektra looks up from the sunroof and sees Daredevil, and Daredevil is able to keep up with a car driving at a normal speed, whatever the speed limit is down Times Square. Whatever the speed limit in Times Square is, Daredevil is able to keep up with at a jogging fucking pace. He is not running fast, okay? Bullseye kills the drivers. The car flips or crashes. Daredevil jumps down from the building. They have Daredevil and Bullseye have a bit of a Mexican standoff, and they go at each other. Bullseye throws like a spear at Daredevil. He's able to block it, and Bullseye's like, oh my god, he made me miss. I never fucking miss. And he just had it out for Daredevil ever since. Right after that point, he had it out for Daredevil. They go at each other. Daredevil kicks him off his bike. But Bullseye managed to take one of his staff, throws it at him. And as Daredevil's about to catch the staff, an explosion happens from a bike, or from the bike that Bullseye was riding, and it skews his vision. He's not able to catch the staff in time, and it goes right into Elektra's dad's chest, killing him, making Elektra believe that Daredevil killed her dad. And what's dumb about that is she can clearly see that it wasn't Daredevil attacking them in the beginning. And the way that she is laying on the ground, her head is facing the direction of where Daredevil and Bullseye are having their standoff. She can clearly see that Daredevil didn't throw the fucking staff into her dad's chest, but she believes he did it, and she grabs a gun and starts shooting at Daredevil. Yeah, she's mad at Daredevil because she's mad at Daredevil. I don't know. Anyway, we cut to the funeral. The funeral scene. Let me tell you about this funeral scene. It is the most over-emotional, over-dramatic, over-angsty funeral I have ever seen in a movie. And it doesn't help that My Immortal from Evanescence is playing over it. It's so cheesy. It's incredibly overdramatic. She walks over to Elektra walks over to Matt Murdock, and just the dialogue between these two is so god awful. And it just, I want revenge. Revenge isn't gonna help. Trust me, I know. Matt Murdock takes off his glasses, and it's 2 takes of him taking off his glasses, and it's one's in normal speed and the other one is that stupid choppy slow motion. It's all over dramatic. And Elektra gets in the car and just takes off, leaving Matt Murdock in the rain. And it's just it's so over dramatic. I fucking love every second of it. My wife and I quote it all the time. So then we cut to Ben Urch, the journalist. He is talking to Kevin Smith, who makes a cameo in this movie. He is like a forensic... I can't think of the name, but the guys who basically they cut open the body and see the cause of death and stuff. I can't think of the name. It's literally on the tip of my tongue. But anyway... He's talking to him. He pays him off because this guy's like, oh, I got some pretty crazy shit that you've never seen before. And he shows him Daredevil staff. And honestly, this scene actually is pretty well done because the guy, he twists a couple knobs and it turns into a staff. And Ben Urch recognizes that staff because earlier at the ball, he meets Matt Murdock and comments on his staff, saying it's a cool color or something. But basically, now Ben Urch knows who Daredevil is. Like I said, it's a pretty well done scene. It's very quick, to the point, but honestly, the guy who plays Ben Urch, Joe Pantoliano, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, he's pretty good in that scene. And Kevin Smith is also good in that scene as well. It then cuts to Matt Murdock walking, and Ben Urch meets up with him and basically says, look, I think that your girlfriend's in trouble because the Kingpin doesn't just kill you, he kills your whole family. So if you know anybody that could protect her, you might want to call him up. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then we get another Evanescence song of Elektra training with a bunch of sandbags that drop from the ceiling, and she's cutting them and slicing them up and spinning and doing all kinds of acrobatic shit. The scene is, again, super over dramatic, and the song is very on the nose. The part in the song where it goes all this time I can't believe I couldn't see, kept in the dark, but you would never follow me. It cuts to fucking Daredevil because, get it, all this time he couldn't see. He's blind. He's kept in the dark. And she won't follow him. After that scene, actually after the funeral scene, the cheesiness and the super comic book campiness is just cranked up to 11 from here on out. This is basically the third act. So the third act on, everything is just dialed up. And honestly, I am here for it. At this point, I was just so like conditioned and just, fucking whatever. I was for it. It was at least entertaining. Yeah, we cut to Daredevil on a roof. I think he's looking for Bullseye. I don't know why he's on the roof, but Elektra hunts him down. They fight. Obviously, he doesn't want to hurt her, so he's not really fighting back. He's just defending himself. And then Elektra stabs him through the shoulder and does a couple other things. Basically, just kicks his ass. And then just the dialogue is so fucking bad, but she's like, oh, I want to look into my father's killer's eyes as I take his life, and takes Daredevil's mask off, and oh shit, it's Matt Murdock. And she just instantly is like, oh no, oh my god, I can't believe. Like, she just instantly takes his side. But then Bullseye shows up, and it's never really revealed to Elektra that Bullseye is the one that killed her dad. She just kind of takes Daredevil's side and decides to fight Bullseye. I'm sure there was a scene missing. Anyway, Elektra fights Bullseye, and it is a pretty cool fight. There's a really good scene where she throws one of her little, I forget what they're called, like the little dagger knife things. She throws that at Bullseye. He's able to catch it, and he throws it back at her. She tries to catch it, but it goes right through her hand. I liked that scene a lot. I thought it was pretty well done. And she dies. Bullseye kills her, stabs her with her own dagger. Yeah, I think, honestly, Elektra's death is pretty well done. It sets up Elektra's origin pretty well in this movie. But, like, honestly, I forgot to mention the whole love story between Matt Murdock and Elektra. It's super rushed. Like, they have, I think, 2 interactions with each other. And then all of a sudden, they're, like, in love. And I love you. And I wanted to look beautiful for you. And this and that. And, I mean, it's believable enough because Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner do have really good chemistry together. And I think this is actually the movie where they met and got married on. I'm pretty sure this is the movie. But yeah, it's super rushed and like, fuck, it's kind of out of nowhere. They fall in love out of nowhere. Like, there were obviously scenes missing from this movie. But anyway, Daredevil manages to get away. It then cuts back to the beginning of the movie where Daredevil is on top of the cathedral on the cross and falling down from the ceiling. I guess he was telling the priest his life story or something. And then Bullseye shows up at the church and, tells the priest to fuck off. And Daredevil and Bullseye fight. And they fight, like, it's a very cool idea. It is very Daredevil-esque to fight in a church like this. But they climb up on these giant organ pipes that are so comically fucking huge. And, like, there are parts where, like, someone falls off and they manage to catch their fall, but they're falling for such a long fucking time. And it's not like it's in slow-mo. They are falling in, like, real time. But the point of view of where they're falling, they're so high up. It's like, I've been to the St. Peter's Cathedral in New York, and I was honestly looking out. Is there like organ pipes that are this fucking big? They're not this fucking big. This is such an over-exaggerated scene. Honestly, it went from a cool setting to, okay, this is just fucking stupid. And then, yeah, they're like fighting on these pipes. Bullseye finds out that loud sound is able to stop Daredevil for a bit. even though gunshots don't do the trick. So he starts banging all the pipes together, and Daredevil is he's down. Bullseye stands over him, and of course, because it wasn't, I guess it wasn't a trope yet. I don't know, but Bullseye has to have his villain monologue before he kills the main hero, giving the hero a chance to get the upper hand. But Bullseye reveals that Kingpin was behind everything, and Wilson Fisk is Kingpin. Even though, like, I always thought that was an obvious thing. I thought everybody knew that Wilson Fisk was the Kingpin. But whatever. I guess Daredevil didn't know. And while all this is going on, there's police outside surrounding the area. They have, like, snipers on the roof. And I think they were aiming for somebody. I don't even think they knew who they were aiming at. They just saw a silhouette and fucking fired. Whoever was sniping fired a shot. And Daredevil was able to hear the shot, get Bullseye positioned in a way where the gunshot would shoot through both of Bullseye's hands, and then Daredevil throws him out of the window. You know, we cut over to Fisk Tower, and I guess Kingpin got word, I think, about something. He knows that Daredevil's coming somehow. I don't know. He just somehow knows. And tells his guards to go home because he's got to face him head on. It was actually a pretty cool line. It was like like I said, I like Michael Clark Duncan as this. He says, I grew up in the Bronx, and this is something that you just wouldn't understand. And Daredevil shows up. Wilson Fisk gives his monologue of how, like, oh yeah, I killed your dad, and I killed Elektra, and I killed Elektra's dad, and I'm gonna kill you. And they fight. And of course, because Michael Clark Duncan is a fucking huge dude compared to Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is skinny in this movie. He kicks Daredevil's ass easily. But as Wilson Fisk is having his monologue, Daredevil can see the water pipes through the walls, and he somehow manages to break them, which causes the fire sprinklers to go off, and he's able to see. And then he's able to kick Kingpin's ass, which from that point, when the water is dropping and everything's a little skewed, you get Wilson Fisk's point of view, which is a little skewed because, like, the water and the lights and everything, it's hard to see. You get Daredevil's stupid PS2 point of view, and it's a little bit more clear because he's able to see. It is a pretty cool yin and yang, I guess you can say, a point of view of each character. But Daredevil gets the upper hand. He breaks both of Wilson Fisk's legs, and then the water conveniently stops. And Wilson Fisk is like, I'm going to tell everybody who you are, and everyone's going to be after you. And Daredevil goes, yeah, sure, go ahead and tell everybody that you got your ass kicked by a blind guy. And then some more dialogue is exchanged, but the weirdest one that I noticed was Kingpin saying, like, oh, the police are out for Daredevil. They think you killed Elektra's dad. And Daredevil goes, no, haven't you heard? The word's out on the Kingpin. I can hear them coming up the street. It was never mentioned that Kingpin is wanted for murder or for anything, or was even set up in any kind of way. Like, that was an obvious scene that is missing from this fucking movie. But yeah, Daredevil leaves. Kingpin's like, I'll get you, and basically shakes his fists in the air. And then Daredevil goes back to where his dad died. He throws a rose down. It's a very fake rose. I don't know why they couldn't use a real rose. And then, everything is back to normal. Matt Murdock is back in a coffee shop talking to Foggy Nelson. He misses Elektra. He has her necklace. She's wearing a necklace that she says is from her mother. He has that necklace hung up somewhere on a rooftop, and he finds out it's made of braille. It just for convenience. And then the movie ends with Ben Urich writing an article about the identity of Daredevil, which he then deletes. And then Daredevil and him are like buddies now, and Daredevil jumps off of a roof, and the movie ends, and more early 2000s butt rock happens. Look, I'm not gonna lie, I did enjoy parts of this movie. You know, watching it again, it did bring back me being like 10 years old again, watching this movie and just being like, yeah, action, Daredevil's cool. And honestly, this was the movie that got me into Daredevil. I do like Daredevil as a comic book character. I am super happy though that we got a better version of Daredevil in the TV show. But like I said, you know, there are some things in this movie that I do feel they got right over the TV show, or at least things that I prefer here over the TV show. Like I said, the villains, Michael Clark Duncan is a great Kingpin. I actually did like this Bullseye over the Bullseye that we got in the TV show. You know, I am supposedly he's coming back for Daredevil Reborn. But, you know, I don't know, maybe that was a rumor. But the Bullseye in this movie, honestly, you know, for the type of movie that it is, it's enjoyable. It's fun. And, I mean, I'm a little torn on Elektra because I think, you know, the TV show obviously has the added benefit of however many episodes the season were. It was like 13 episodes or something. They had 13 episodes to flesh out Elektra in the show. They also had 13 episodes to flesh out Matt Murdock as a kid, like learning his powers and training and stuff. I mean, you know, I can't dock this movie too much for brushing over things like that, but obviously they could have done better. Right now, this movie sits at a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 35% audience score. So, you know, people obviously didn't like it. Critics were a little bit more forgiving of this movie. This has a 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb, so it's very middle of the road. Is it worth your time? Yeah, I mean, if you want like a time capsule of what the early 2000s were like, then yeah, 100%. This movie honestly reminds me of something that you would have like on your PSP or something, you know, like it's just very of its time. But it's also very cheesy. It was clearly made when people didn't know how to make superhero comic book movies. Or it's not to say that, you know, there wasn't care put into this movie. This movie had care put behind it. You can see that obviously, you know, Mark Steven Johnson seems to be a fan of the character. Ben Affleck is on record for saying he does love this character. But it's just, you know, the end product, it's just super cheesy. And honestly, an R rating would have made this movie a little better. I know that there is a director's cut that is R-rated, that has scenes added. Hopefully it's scenes that explain a lot of shit that happened in this movie, because fuck, especially with the end dialogue, things just happen, okay? People just say shit and we take your word for it. But yeah, it's an okay movie. It's better than... It's actually not better than most. It's better than Elektra, which is the follow-up to this movie. Maybe I'll talk about it. I don't know. But anyway, if you liked this episode, consider giving this show a follow. You can find me on Instagram at the Silver Underground Podcast. You could also find me on Spotify and SoundCloud at the Silver Underground Podcast as well. Like I said, I am on Threads. I don't post enough on it, but if you want to follow me there, you can go ahead and do that. Thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys next week with another fantastic episode. All right, guys.